want to fend for myself, and I want to build people up for them to fend. Hey everybody, Clark Fredericks here with a new episode of the Free Like Me podcast. Guests come in here, speak their truth, and leave free like me. Woo! Coming July 29th, it is rapidly approaching. My book, Scarred, with Simon & Schuster Publishing. It'll be out soon, so go get your pre-order on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, Goodreads, wherever they sell books. I wrote that thing 10 years ago, and it's just now coming out. So don't give up on your goals and dreams. If you want to be a guest on the show or involved in my coaching program, reach out to me privately on any social media site or go to my website, freelike-me.com, fill out a form, set up a consultation call, and away we go. And this week I have Shelby. She's a beautiful young lady. She's went to LA to become an actress, and guess what? The LA trap in Hollywood is still going on, and she has some stories about it. She made it out alive, thank God, and she's here to share her story. So let's meet Shelby. Shelby, welcome to the show.
Hello. I'm happy to be here. Exciting.
You made it a little easier. You moved to New Jersey just in time for the show.
I know, just through the Lincoln Tunnel. Still, people consider it still technically Manhattan over there, so...
So you grew up in Connecticut, and then you went to L.A., and now back to New York, and then just in the last week or two, moved to Jersey.
Yeah, it was Connecticut, L.A., then back to Connecticut because of the pandemic.
Oh.
And then, and then New York, and then now kind of technically Jersey.
Yeah, I guess the pandemic shut everything down
Yes.
acting-wise for a while, right?
Yes. Well, I mean, it's still kind of like trying to recover too, and some places are not recovering. You know, some places are doing better than others, and we're still dealing with a lot from that. So.
And it's not just acting; you do singing too, right?
Yeah, I do. I got my hands in all the pots. Yeah, I dance because I have to do musical theater. I dance because I have to. I enjoy certain forms of dance a lot, but I find it more challenging. But music, dance, acting, modeling, musical theater, you know. So a lot of people who do like musical theater, they'll like mostly just do musical theater, you know, or some people will just do film and TV, or some people just do music. So when you have your hands in a lot of different pots, it takes a lot longer for things to come to fruition.
So I would think that would open more doors for you, like you have more opportunities.
It can, but it's very time consuming. You know, making music, like making an album, making an EP, that's very time consuming. That takes all of your time and attention. So while you're doing something like that, then, you know, that's going to take you away from film and TV and all those auditions, because just auditioning for film, TV stuff, that takes all of your time. Like one audition, one self-tape, like I think a few weeks ago, it took me 7 hours just for one. Just to record it to the point that I felt like it was ready to be submitted.
So you submit auditions?
Yeah. Well, nowadays, post-pandemic, especially, they'll have you do a self-tape, right, of the scene a lot, oftentimes. Even in musical theater now, they'll have you do a self-tape of, like, you know, a song, a dance, you know, and a scene, and then you submit it online.
Oh, yeah, because I got in my head, you know, 3 people sitting at a desk, and you know, you go in there and they're like, "Here's your scene."
We still do that. But not as often. I miss that. Like when I first moved to LA, you know, most of my auditions were in person. I loved that.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I loved it because I feel like you have an opportunity to like connect with somebody when you're physically present with them. Whereas, you know, behind a screen, you're just like another name and a number, you know, and they just sift through you. They'll watch you for 2 minutes and then boom, on to the next one. And it could be something so small and silly that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with your acting ability or your performance ability. It could be, the way that they, you know, placed the camera and the way that their eye line was, you know, during the scene. It looked great. I love that, you know. And it's like, you know, I'm not a cinematographer, you know, I'm an actor here, right? So I can get my eye line when I go onto a set and be like, where do you want my eye line? Where am I marked? Where am I going? Like, what is my physical movements? You know, stuff like that. That can all be worked out. So I feel like it's just silly. It's silly things. It can put you at a disadvantage for sure.
So when you're doing a video that you're submitting for an audition, how long is it?
Like that one took me 7 hours, and that was just a scene.
For how long of a piece?
That was just one scene, and it took me 7 hours. But it was a long scene, so it might have been like 3 pages of dialogue, right? Whereas,
So are we talking like a 5-minute video?
probably not even 5 minutes, because really, most of the time they're only going to watch 2 to 3.
Right.
Honestly, even if it is, though, I mean, they might have you do a 5-minute scene, but they're probably not going to watch the entire thing.
So to get that 2 to 3 minute piece
Perfect.
took you 7 hours.
Perfect. To get it perfectly, because you do it and then you just kind of got to get warmed up into it, and that takes like an hour or two, and then you'll do it and then you'll keep watching it back and keep watching it back and keep watching it back after every single time that you do it. And then you want to get it perfect, just to the point where you feel like you can hold up against anybody else that's submitting, and you want to think outside of the box. And then there's so many things that goes into a scene,
Are you doing your own editing?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I've worked
So you had to learn how to do that, too.
Yeah, but I also, that kind of coincides with like my jobs that I do on a normal basis. I do like a lot of content creation, and I do a lot of stuff in social media. And so I'm really used to that.
What app are you using?
Well,
mostly?
I'm experienced with Canva,
CapCut.
like everything.
right.
Adobe, all of it.
Now, are you just a singer, or do you play instruments too?
I'm a singer. I can read music, and I dabble with like piano when I need to.
All right.
When I need to. But yeah.
So tell me about
Mostly
your upbringing, how you got started down this road.
Okay, yeah, we'll start from the beginning. Oh, should we start from the very beginning of where I was? Okay.
Yeah, start from the very beginning.
So technically I was born in the Dominican Republic, because people get this a lot. They're like, were you born in Connecticut? I'm like, no, I was not born a nutmegger. That's what they call us, by the way. Nutmeg.
Connecticut people are nutmeggers?
They're called nutmeggers.
I have never heard that.
Yes, we're called nutmeggers. That is, how like, in Los Angeles, you're Los Angelino, right? Yeah, no, we're nutmeggers. Yeah,
wow.
Great name, right?
Learn something new every day.
Yeah. So fun fact for everyone. But
is it the nutmeg capital of the world?
I don't know. I have no idea why, actually. That's another fact I should get down, but we're called nutmeggers. And I was adopted. So I was born in the Dominican Republic, kind of near Santo Domingo. It's like a place called Los Habaneros, something. Don't quote me. But yeah, I was born in the DR. And my parents, so I was originally going to be adopted out to somebody else, but this is the story I've been told. But there was issues with it, and the government flagged it because I guess that person had like a sketchy prior history, and this was somebody in Puerto Rico. My birth mother was going to adopt me out. I was born one of 7. All of my other siblings are half siblings. I'm the youngest one. My birth mother was told, she was like, you can't have more kids because you can't afford to take care of them, like they were very impoverished. This is like the Dominican Republic in like the 90s. I won't say when in the 90s, but in the 90s. And so it was very impoverished, like people were living in huts and like starving. And this is like kind of pre-tourism boom in the DR. Like I feel like that happened really in the early 2000s. Right? When everyone's going to Punta Cana and Santo Domingo and stuff like that. Right. But yeah, so in the 90s, it was just very, very poor and impoverished. And so, but my birth mother didn't listen, decided to have me anyways. And then she got her tubes tied after me, which I find interesting. But when my parents finally got to me, I was about almost a year. Not quite, but almost. And I was really, really sick. I had malnutrition, tuberculosis, and parasites. I was sick with like multiple different things because, impoverished. Then they brought me back home to Connecticut. And then I believe they went through an agency. That's the thing, too. If you even research this, you'll see it's actually a common issue is that there's a lot of, you're really recommended to go through like an adoption lawyer. But like certain agencies and certain things, especially in the 90s, back then, it can be a little bit shady and sketchy as far as it's mostly like a monetary thing. Of course, it's all coming down to money, right. And they want to get as much money as they can and profit as much as they can off of each individual family. And so the agency where they said that the paperwork fell through. And this was all in like the newspaper in Connecticut back in the day. So if somebody finds it, but then they took me back. And so then my parents, like there was like pictures in the newspaper of them like posing by my crib and like them looking very solemn, like with this, and the story was like, I laugh about it now because it ended happy. But, It's interesting, but it was all in the in the newspaper. And then my parents, they went to a mayor. They went to Rosa DeLaura. Shout out Rosa DeLaura. I can say her. She's a politician. She's fantastic. She helped my parents get me back. So I don't know with the legalities, whatever she did, she was able to help them get me back. So they flew back, got me back. And it's just so impoverished. Like before I went over there, like my ears were pierced. You know, when you get your baby's ears pierced when they're young. And I had like little diamond studs in my ears. And like when they got me back, of course, they were like completely gone. So just to give you an idea of like how desperate and like impoverished it is, even with your own like birth family, stuff like that would happen. And obviously I wasn't very well taken care of. But so, yeah, they got me back, and then they healed me from all of my illnesses. So thank God for that. And that was the beginning. And that was just the start. That was just me coming into the world. But thank goodness I don't remember. I was too young. So I don't remember anything of that. I know a lot of adopted people, a lot of other adopted kids growing up. And it seems like when you're really, really young like that, it's a very different kind of situation. Like when you're one or like, a toddler, very young, when you get with your family. I would say it's a very different situation than when you're adopted when you're like 6 or, 8 or 10, because when you're 6 or 8 or 10, you have like a prior memory of your birth family. I don't have any prior memory of my birth family. So there's that disconnect there. And also the circumstances of my adoption caused, for me, there's a wall. There's a disconnect there. So I don't feel like they're family to me. I just feel like they're like my birth givers or whatever you want to call them. So my parents that raised me I just call them my parents. They're the only parents I've ever known, the only parents I acknowledge. And same with my other half siblings, wherever they are out there. I mean, I don't consider, them family. I wish them all well, but I don't consider them family.
Yeah, just think of the life you would have had if you were left down there.
Yeah, I wouldn't have survived. So I wouldn't have had to deal with anything. I wouldn't have lived. That's the thing. Yeah. They were all older than me, and my parents did get to meet them. Like my dad always said that I looked like similar to a few of my half siblings. I've seen pictures of my birth mother. I like have her freckles and stuff, but I can very much tell that I must look like my birth father because I don't look like her at all in the face at all. So I'm like, I definitely probably look like him, which is weird. It's interesting, like, because, when you grow up in like a typical regular family, right? You have, your mom, your dad, maybe siblings and stuff, and you kind of have, an idea of your medical history, and you have an idea of like how you might grow up to look like and things like that. And for me, it's like when you're playing The Sims, shout out to anybody who likes to play that game, and you like create a character and it's like the first person and there's no like prior family like that. Like you have no idea what you're going to grow up to look like. And another fun thing, I don't know my medical history because of that. So, right. But yeah. And even, simple things like, I don't know the time of my birth. It's not on like my birth certificate. I've got like a really ghetto birth certificate, so it's not on there. Good luck to me trying to find that out. Right. I'm not gonna. What am I gonna do? Like, there's no way to find that one out. So,
did your adopted family have other children? Do you have brothers and sisters?
From my family that raised me, no. No. I'm it. I'm right. Lucky them. I'm it. Yeah, I'm it. And it's really interesting too, because like there's only 18 people in the world with my last name, and this last generation. So it's just me and my cousins, and all of us are females. Isn't that wild? Yeah. So I'm like determined to keep the last name and never change it. It's just really interesting, when you grow up. Like I said, I grew up since I was like a baby, so they're all I remember. So to me, it was never any different. I didn't really feel different actually at all until people made me feel different, like other people, because I grew up pretty much the same as everyone else would initially, like I don't remember anything else. I just hear that I'm adopted. I don't remember that though. All I remember is my parents, and I look similar to my father. People don't usually like, if you saw me and my family together, you would never guess that I'm adopted. My father's darker than me and he has curly dark hair. So. It's just, I blended really well. But yeah, it's interesting. I never felt different until people made me feel different. Other people, like, growing up in school and things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was life like early on in Connecticut, and how did your parents get you into dance or music, or how did this this desire, for this career take hold?
I have to say what exactly happened, because if I don't, my aunt's going to be like, what? You don't remember? I discovered you. No. No. So my cousins, it's like a very big thing. I think this is a really big thing in a lot of places with young girls. They'll like start taking dance classes when they're younger. My cousin was really heavy into dance. So I started when I was really young taking dance classes. I wasn't as into it back then as I may be now, but because I was doing it out of like obligation, like, oh, my parents say I got to go to dance class, and so I started probably that first, technically speaking. But when I was like 6 years old, one of my aunts heard me singing and she said, oh my goodness, you're fantastic. She was blown away by my voice. And so from then on, she was like, you've got to like get her into lessons. And so when I was like I was 6 around the time. And then I started with my first vocal teacher. My parents found somebody through somebody I went to school with. They just like, tried to find like the best, closest person that we could. And then from there, we found more contacts of like even better coaches. But I started when I was 6. And yeah, I started training. I remember she was giving me my first, musical theater songs, because you have to be classically trained, like you do. Like, everyone in musical theater, they start when they're really young. They start when they're like 5 or 6, for the most part. Not everybody. Some people start later, but most professionals, they start when they're very young. Like all of my peers, anybody else I know in the union now, we've all started. And some of them I've gone to school with for years. Like I'll see them at auditions in New York, like, oh, you're auditioning for this show, this off-Broadway show or Broadway show. And it's people I went to college with or high school with or things like that. But you start very young. You start like 5, 6. And so they'll usually start you off with like, show tunes, of course, but like with like Italian arias to train your vocals. That's what like really like the best will do. They'll start with Italian arias to train your vocals, a little bit of opera kind of, you got to get that bass down. And so I started with that. I remember like resenting some of the songs I would get given because I was like 6 and I'm like, I'm a big girl. I don't have to sing The Little Mermaid. Why am I singing? And now like it's funny. And I didn't want to sing a song from Anastasia. And now it's funny because that's like one of my favorite songs.
That's
like,
one of your go-tos?
One of my go-tos. I love the songs from that show and I love that show in general. So I'm like fine with it now. When I was 6, I'm like, no, I want to be big girl. I don't want to sing a song like this, and so. Now
in high school, are you doing all the plays and everything? Are you in all that?
So it kept going on. I kept training. I also was thrown into acting lessons as a child, because you got to train in all 3. You can't just do singing. You got to do dance, acting, and singing. You got to train in all 3. And you got to actually take them seriously. That's the other thing. I didn't take my dance classes seriously, so I had to do a lot of making up for it now in my later age. But yeah, so then in middle school, I was still training. I got to my second vocal teacher, who was on Broadway. He was Phantom on Broadway. He was fantastic. Shout out to Paul Elkin. He's fantastic. He was a great teacher. And he really kind of like helped bring things to the next level for me for the first time. Now, like for a lot of these like legitimate vocal teachers, even still like, and especially as you get older, you have to like audition to become their student. You can't just become their student. You have to audition and show that like, okay, like, is this worth it? Like, do you have what it takes? Like, or is this going to be a waste of time? Because there's no point in training somebody who just doesn't have it. Right. Like a lot of vocal teachers, it's really like that in the professional world. They will not take you if you aren't like just naturally a good singer, and also slightly like some of them won't take you if you haven't been trained before. So it has to be a combination of both. Especially like at my age now, at my level, you have to have training. Like training, you have to have credits, you have to have all sorts of stuff the older you get. But yeah, so I had to audition. He took me on. I was still training and I started doing like pageants. I had my hands in so many pots. I was doing my, first real musical auditions. I remember my first musical audition was at the Schubert Theater for Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. I made it through to I had to be around 12 at this point, and I made it through to like last callbacks. There's like 5 rounds. That's the thing people don't understand. It's not like one audition and then, you're down to 2 people and you get it. No, it's like 5 rounds. And then they start cutting cutting off, and it gets more and more serious as it goes. Like
it's got to be heartbreaking when you get to like
I did.
round 4
That's
or 5.
That's what happened to me. That is exactly what happened to me. That was my first big audition. I got down to the end.
Ugh.
I got cut on the very last one, and it was because I didn't make it through the dance call. And I will never forget it. I was so bitter about it. Keep in mind, I'm a child. I'm a little kid, and it's my first time ever doing this. So of course, and I didn't take rejection very well. To be fair, I love my parents. They're great, but they have no experience in they didn't chase their dreams. They didn't really go to pursue things like that. So they had no like advice they could offer me in terms of like how to handle that like rejection. I really needed somebody to teach me how to handle rejection because I could not handle it at all. I had to learn that myself over time. And I just was so bitter about it. I just like threw the stuff off of me because they give you like a name card. I threw it off when we got outside, of course. And I was so mad to my dad. I'm like, forget this. This is awful. Yeah, I was just, complaining. Oh my gosh, it was bad. Lots of tears, lots of complaining. I was bitter about it for years.
Oh, yeah.
For years. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And there was one girl who made it through, right? Who, when I did the pageants, right? She was, I think it was like, we did like Miss Preteen Connecticut, or it was like Miss Teen Connecticut, one of those. And she had already been in that title role, right? And later on, so the first time I did, I think it was Miss Preteen Connecticut. This is all happening at the same time. I got, what did I get? I got second or third runner up, right? And so we came back. I was like, oh, I'm mad again, right? And she had won, I think, that year. So I'm extra bitter now. She gets into the show. She gets the crown. I'm like, this cannot happen to me. So I trained really, really, really hard with Miss Connecticut. Shout out to her. She helped train me. And then I came back the next year and I won. And I won every single title that year. And she had to hand over her crown to me. And I was very, very happy. I was very, very happy. I was such a bitter girl. I was so bitter. But yeah, so a lot is going on in middle school time. I'm still training independently. Then I get to high school and I go to Educational Center of the Arts in New Haven, Connecticut. Shout out to them. It's a really amazing school. They deserve all the funding for all of their stuff. It really was great. And a lot of the people that I went to school with, they've gone on to do such great things. Some of them are on Broadway now. A lot of us have gone on to do like film, TV things, and it was amazing because it was a great school. I got straight A's. I always struggled with math. At my regular sending school, I struggled with math heavily. I was okay with science, history and English I was great with, but I really struggled in math. And so grades in that area were really tough for me. The rest of my grades would be great, but math would always be I'd have to struggle for a C, but when I went to my arts high school, I would always get straight A's, and these were honors classes, honors level classes. It was easy for me, so easy to do well in that.
So in an art school, you're taking English, math, but you're also taking dance, singing, music?
Actually, how it works is I went to 2 high schools at the same time. So I would go to my regular sending school, and then I would leave there at around 12 p.m. every day. And then I would go to my arts high school where I would take my arts classes and all of that other stuff. And on Fridays, we didn't have arts high school, so I would get out early on Fridays from my regular sending school at 12 because Monday through Thursday, I was going to school till 4 p.m.
Now, do you have to get a scholarship to get into the art school?
You have to audition.
You have to audition.
You have to audition. Okay. See, they're already starting you off very young. Auditioning, you have to get used to it. They really do not wait. They really just throw you right into the frying pan, which is good because they want to get you used to it at a young age. You have to get used to that.
Used to rejection.
Used to that process.
And the process.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I would say the rejection part, it was pretty fair, at least for the most part, pretty easy for a lot of people to get into the art school. You just had to have some sort of a talent or gift for it, or just, and also a passion for it. You
go to this art school and graduate, and then do we instantly take off for LA?
No. So I'll never forget when we're getting ready. I remember dreading it because we're getting to the end of school, right? And I'm everybody's starting to write on we had this board in school, in our high school, right? Where everybody was going to write in all the colleges that they were going to go to when they left school. And I was weighing out my options because the one thing that was holding me back and holding me down, I could have probably went to an amazing Ivy League school if I didn't struggle so badly in math. It really, really held me back. And I would try so hard too, and it just It was very difficult. But so I was like, okay, I'm going to get my prereqs done then, and then I'll transfer into a better school. That's my plan. So I decided to go to Southern Connecticut, SCSU, Southern Connecticut State University. I was like, I'll get it. That makes sense because then I'll stick around a little bit longer in Connecticut. I'll get my prereqs done. So mainly, just like, the math, science stuff that is not going to be of use to me when I'm going for a BFA in musical theater, just get that out of the way. I applied to quite a few places, but I was like, this is going to be the most realistic for me to get over like that hurdle because it lowered my GPA a little bit. I had like a perfect GPA at my arts high school, but that's going to bring you down, if we were going to be applying to places like Yale or, Harvard or,
Right.
any of these very big Ivy League schools with these big, theater kind of things going on there. So I went to SCSU. I was like, okay, we're going to get this done. I'm going to get my prereqs done. I went for theater, and I'm really actually happy that I did because a lot of the people that I know from SCSU have gone on to do really great things in theater. I see them all the time in my New York auditions for Broadway, off-Broadway, and all sorts of stuff. So they're really still heavily into theater in the theater scene in New York and in Connecticut. I didn't even know until recently, until I joined the union, how much is going on in Connecticut for theater. There's a lot going on in Connecticut for theater. It's like its own little area. So it's really, really fascinating. But I got to meet a lot of really cool people there that I still see, like I said, all the time. And I run into them, and some of them were teachers of mine. And it's just really great. So that kind of gave me like a little bit more of groundwork. Those were good times, because I was still in Connecticut. So, but I had, of course, big dreams. Like I was like, my family is like, why don't you go to New York? It's right there. And I'm like, yeah, no, I want to get away from you people. No, I'm just kidding. I want to get away from Connecticut. I wanted to go to like, I had that. I feel like this is like a common thing, especially like at that age growing up, this idealization of like LA and California. Like it's a big thing, it's in all the songs, everyone's going through that phase, where they're smoking weed and things like that. And so I was like, wow, I really want to go to California. And also one of my favorite bands is The Doors. And I was really inspired by Jim Morrison. I was like, I have to go to LA. He went to LA. I have to go to LA. I have to go see it. I really love the hippie era. I love the 60s and 70s and that music. And I was like, I have to go see what California is about. So I applied to a few places, and I was trying to figure out where it is I could get in to transfer. And I ran into a few difficulties. This is something they don't tell you, is a lot of schools on the West Coast will not accept your credits from accredited schools on the East Coast. They do that because they just want you to pay that school, the full money. They want you to finish with them and pay that money. That's really what it is.
Right.
So a lot of them will not accept certain credits, and they make it very, very difficult for you to transfer. So I basically had to take what I could, and I auditioned for AMDA, which is American Musical Dramatic Academy. And the only downside to it was my credits were not going to be able to transfer. So I'd kind of have to like start over, which sucked. But I was going to go from BFA in musical theater. And they have an AMDA in New York. Right. Of course, my family's like, AMDA in New York? No, I'm like, we're going for AMDA in LA, which is funny because if you're going for musical theater, you would think you would want to go to the school in New York. No, I was like, I want to go to the one in LA. But also, like I said, I didn't want to just do, musical theater. I wanted to do film, TV, music. I'm like one of those people who wants to do it all. And like most people don't want to do that. That would be the question I would always get. They would be like, are you a singer who acts or are you an actor who sings?
And then how do you know how to answer that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think I'm a singer who acts, but at the same time though, I'm different things at different times. For like the past how many years I've been an actor who sings. But now I'm a singer who acts. So it depends. And then sometimes I'm a dancer too. But, it's just, it's difficult, and they'd be like, so which one do you want to pursue the most? And I'm like, everything. And, then you're really spread out. So I decided to go to LA. I go to AMDA in LA. I'm 20 by the time I get there. Right. I remember just getting there. I'm 20 years old. It was a hard adjustment at first. It's funny because like looking back, I'm like, I thought that was a hard adjustment. But yeah, at that time, it was a big deal in my world, you know?
Right.
I just moved across the country by myself to this strange place that I've never ever I had never even been to California before I just decided I wanted to move there. Like that, I was that kind of person, you know? I was like, I idealize this. This is something I want to explore. I'm just going to move there. So I did.
Now, while you were out there, you got hooked up with a manager from some girl you knew, like said, "Oh, I've got somebody you got to meet."
Well, so what happened was I went through 2 years at AMDA, which were fabulous. I wish I could have stayed the entire 4. But my student loans were like very, very high. And considering I had student loans from my first school, you know, and my goal was to stay in California. Like after I adjusted, I loved it. I was one of those people at school too. It very is contingent to the story. I didn't spend like a lot of time on campus. Like I lived on campus, right? Most people that were at my school, they like were very cliquey and they kind of just they would hang out together and they would never venture outside of campus. I was a very different person. I had already started my social media accounts when I was in Connecticut before I even moved to LA. And so I already had like a pretty big following, maybe like 30,000 to 60,000 by the time I got to school. And so I was already like working on networking with people in LA outside of school. So I was meeting cinematographers and other people, and I would literally just leave for the weekend. I would leave campus for the weekend and go spend time with people outside of school that I knew, that I was friends with, or somebody I was seeing or dating at the time. But it was always people in the industry. It was very, very easy, especially at that time, through social media to meet people in the industry outside of campus. And I'm happy I did it because I also kind of would look at the people on my campus who were like really cliquey, and I'm like, well, good luck when you get out of here because you're not going to have any connections. You know, the industry is so much bigger than just our school. So I'm happy I did it, but at the same time, you know, it does when you get out there. LA and New York. Everybody kind of knows everybody in a sense in the industry, I would say. And in LA especially, via social media, it's very heavy social media over there. So I'm sure they probably saw me through somebody or something like that. But it was a woman. She contacted me, and she had messaged me on Instagram, and she had said to me, she was like, "Oh my goodness, you're so talented, this, that, and the other." I'm paraphrasing, but she was like, you know, my manager is really interested in what would love to talk to you if you're interested. You can go ahead and like check out my credits and stuff. And she had like some serious credits on her. Like, of course, they know like they have their shtick down. Everybody in the industry and people like this, they have their shtick down. And this is just kind of how it works overall anyways. Like it can go either way. It could be somebody who is shady. It could be somebody who's legit, you know? But yeah, so she hit me up and I could tell, I mean, even with the credits, they could still be shady. They could be legit. But I saw she had solid credits. They knew that's the first thing I'm going to go look at, right? So she had a solid resume. She had things on there that I definitely wanted to attain, right? So I'm like, oh, of course, I'm interested. I would like to hear more. So then and it's funny because this is the only time I think she was like initially involved. She just really went to the wayside, like disappeared from the entire situation soon after I was connected with him. So that's kind of what they do. It's like a common tactic too with like predators. So it's weird. I learned that after the fact. They like will bait, you know, with a woman that they, you know, are involved with. But it's interesting. So then we set up, I think, our first meeting. And it was all normal, very, very normal in the beginning. Very, very normal. Like not anything anybody would, you know, be alarmed by. Like we met in like a public place and, you know, we just had normal conversations about the industry and what it is I'm trying to attain, you know, where I'm at right now, what my goals are, how the industry works, things like that. 'Cause I mean, I'm fresh pickings, right? I'm bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and and to top it off, I have, you know, these issues in my past with my upbringing. You know, my father battled with like addiction and my parents are divorced and it was very messy divorce. And, my father was like an alcoholic, dealt with mental health issues. So that, coming from that kind of background, broken home issues thing, that's ripe pickings for people like this. They love that. And I'm bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
They're like sharks.
Yeah,
they can smell it.
That's what I used to say. I was like, as soon as I got there, I used to always say that. I was like, I was thrown in with the sharks, which is funny because I love sharks and I have a bunch of tattoos of them. I love sharks. So you have to learn to become a shark, right? But yeah, so basically, it just started off very normal. It was totally normal, like nothing alarming at all. Mostly just becoming friends and getting to know this person, this new person. It doesn't happen like immediately. That's the thing like people don't understand. And they're like, well, why didn't you just say no? Why didn't you just run? It doesn't happen like that. That's not how things happen.
They're grooming you. There's a grooming process.
It's a grooming process, and grooming can take like years. Right. It can take a long time. This was over the course of like a year or more, year and a half. This is a long time, and they don't show the same things to everybody. That's another thing. And also, like, there's like little things like this manager, he took care of his brother who has special needs. And so, he would like show his soft and wonderful and caring side, his family man side. And you're really becoming friendly with this person, becoming friends with this person over the course of a year or so. That's plenty of time to become friends with somebody. So nothing's like alarming you, at that point.
Like, how bad could he be? Takes care of his disabled brother,
That's exactly it. I remember it, and it's still like when I think back on it, it's confusing to me because I'm like the dichotomy of like what kind of person this person is. But it's just they don't think that they're doing anything wrong. That's the thing. They don't think that they're doing anything wrong.
It's like any predator. Most of them have a high position in society. It's it's not like they're under a bridge hiding.
Yeah,
it's
they don't think they're doing anything wrong. And part of that too is kind of just like how the dark side of the industry is. It encourages that, and it makes them. It helps them settle into that mind frame of belief like they're not doing anything wrong because certain things are so normalized. And so, but it was very, very slow to start. And they'll also, another tactic that they'll do, especially in the industry, they'll like introduce you to their like connections or people that they know that are like really successful, like solid connections that they have. This is this famous person I know that I've helped out. This is this famous band. This is this famous actor. This is this, famous agent, whatever, this, that, or the other. And they'll just like subtly show it to you. That's like another thing that they'll like slip in there, over the course of the time, right? And so then it becomes, what are you willing to do? Or like, what are you willing to allow to get to where you want to be? Because keep in mind, by this point, we have a solid game plan of how I'm going to get to where I want to be, But it also, before this really even started happening, it was more the normalization of, oh, look at all these other people. They're all doing this. They're all allowing this. If you don't allow it, you're not going to ever be there. And it's not necessarily just that.
Let me just so the audience understands what you're saying. Allow it when you're saying allowing this, we're talking about sex.
Yeah, allowing. Oh, but it could be anything. They could be like, hey, you have to allow this, this agent, this connect. It could be like, if you're a musician, this bookie to like do this with you, or come, as we see with like the Diddy thing, you have to come to this kind of a gathering, and they'll slip it in there. Like, it's not ever what you actually think it's going to be. It'll be just come, hang out with us. Let's have some fun. Let's just have a really good time. It's going to be a great time, okay? Just for a few hours, we're going to hang out. It's going to be a great time.
And they're showing you famous people or famous bands and saying, how do you think they got to where they're at?
Yes.
Like that
and
sort of thing?
Other actors. Like, I learned so much about so many actors that it is true. And that's the scary and sad part, is that a lot of it is true. There are a lot of actors, especially A-list and otherwise and below it, who are involved in doing these things or are doing these things consensually and otherwise. And so,
thinking it'll catapult them to the next.
It's I don't know if it's necessarily that, as much as they've been groomed so hard themselves to up to that point.
This
you know?
is just part of the process.
It's just it's in the environment.
I
It's
got to
just,
sleep with this agent. I got to sleep with
or
that
I've got to
manager.
I've got to deal with this person trying to sleep with me. Some of the really, not everybody, of course, does it. Some of the really smart ones have learned how to navigate around it, and that's the best way to be. Learn how to navigate kind of around it so that you can avoid it, but still, find the right people. Find the right people, because there are a few people out there who are not predators and are not going to try to
Just a few.
get you into it. It's sad because it's a few. There's a lot. There's a lot at all levels, and that's kind of why I'm here to even talk about that, because people don't realize there's a few, but there's a lot at all levels. You got to find like the best of a bad situation is how I would put it, and then stick with those people. Stick with those people, because there's a lot of it. The part that like really hooked me was, seeing how many other actors were involved. And then I felt like the cards were really stacked against me. And keep in mind, I'm out there by myself. I just got out of my teenage years, I'm really little still, and all my eggs were totally in one basket, and it's not even just that. It's that, there was like veiled, subtle hints, that he would make of like, I guess maybe to like fear monger for me, like of what would happen for me if I didn't want to comply in that kind of world. If I didn't want to comply in that kind of world, I'm going to have a really hard time. I remember him actually literally saying that to me, something like that. He said, if you don't want to, do this stuff, by all means, I'm sure you'll do just fine, but you will have a really hard time. You're going to have a really hard time. He would say that often, that exact term, you'll have a really hard time, And so I'm like, okay, it's very read between the lines here, and what does exactly that mean? Like, what's going to happen? Like, what are you going to do? Like, what is the fallout here? Like, what's going to happen? I would find out soon, though. If I hadn't seen that more legitimate actors were actually doing that, then maybe I would have been able to withstand against the grooming a little bit. But because so many people that were successful were involved in things, shady things like that, it was like, wow, I guess this is just how it is.
This is just part of the job process.
This is just how it is.
Right.
Yeah,
So you sort of feel like trapped.
I felt very trapped.
Yeah, and like,
oh, I felt totally trapped.
This is my dream, and if I want this dream, this is part of getting the dream, right?
Well, and even besides that, for like a lot of people like myself and a lot of others, we literally live to perform. So for us, it is like people are like, oh, you could just go work a regular job. We can't, because it's life or death to people like me and who live to perform. If you live to perform, it's life or death. That is your existence. That is your meaning for waking up in the morning. That's your meaning for putting two shoes on. That's your meaning for whenever horrible things happen, for continuing to push through them. That is like our purpose in life. So when it's like that, then no, I can't just go off and get like a regular 9 to 5. I mean, granted, I worked regular 9 to 5s as well, but that's not my reason for getting up every morning and continuing to exist. When everybody else is going off and getting married and settling down, I'm working towards this. My entire life is committed to this. So it's not like I could just go be a regular person. You can't just go be a regular person when you were born doing this. And also the feeling that you get when you're performing, when you are a real performer, like when you're a singer, when you're an actor, when you're a real performer, the feeling that you get is just, it's like breathing air. It'd be like cutting a limb off.
So we're going back for you, like at the start of this, probably 10, 11 years.
Yes.
And had the Harvey Weinstein thing happened yet? When did that?
So that had not come out yet.
So that hadn't even started.
That had not come out yet. That had not come out yet. And there was whispers, like every Hollywood and LA and New York, everybody kind of knows everybody, like I said. And everybody hears things, like there's definitely a lot of, LA and Hollywood's best kept secrets. There's a lot of things people know through the grapevine about what's going on, like things that have been in the media. Most of us have heard about, even like myself and other people, even like lower level. We knew for like years and years and years and years and years. It was not a secret.
So there's not this movement yet, even, for this to stop this sort of behavior. It's still just running rampant.
Not even. Not yet. But I mean, I would even challenge to say that I think in a lot of ways it is still running rampant, even though certain stories are getting out there. But we'll get into that later as to why I feel that way. But it was definitely still running rampant for sure. You know, it had fully progressed probably by about like a year and a half at this point, you know, because everywhere I'm looking, I'd been in LA for a while at that point, you know, and everywhere I'm looking, I'm like, okay, this is kind of like going on everywhere. So, you know, then it made his grooming more effective. And I'm like, I guess I just have to find a way to deal with this. Right. And so, you know, there was a few times I remember I was living in this. It's funny because when I think about where I was living after college, I'm like, wow, I was living in this like house in Monterey Park. I had a bunch of roommates. It was just, you know, young and living on your own. And he would come and see me there. He saw me there a few times. And that's like when I really just remember, it's so funny because like I've been in therapy for years now. So I definitely have like a disassociation when these things happen. I think that's something I developed to like take myself out of it so I didn't have to deal with it. I remember the first time though, vividly, because he came to my house that I was living in after college. And I remember like it was awful. It was just awful. I mean, and the awful part is that I expressed that I didn't want to do it, you know, that's awful, you know, but he was very adamant that it had to happen. You know, something had to happen between us that for me to be able to get anywhere and for me to not have problems, right? Number, you're going to have a hard time. So, and like I said earlier, I like to reiterate, this is over the course of like a year and a half. This did not happen instantly. And it was only reinforced by the fact that I saw that other very successful people were dealing with the same thing. So I just kind of was like, I have to find a way to cope with this or get around this and to still be able to get what I need to get, right? You know, he came to the house. I remember like the act itself, of course. It was awful, gross. Like it's like gross to even remember stuff like that. You know, it's gross, you know. It's awful, you know. But he had me give him head and he finished. And I remember just like running, like showering, like just scrubbing myself, just like showering because I just like you feel like internally so disgusting and dirty and it feels awful, you know. And this is like a point I like to make too for people. It's not really, you can't call it consent when you make somebody believe that they have to do something. That kind of really takes away their consent then. It's not, if I say I don't want to do something, you're saying I have to do something, then you coerce me into doing something at like with veiled threats. Is that really consent? Because I don't feel it's really complete consent.
Well, each person, him, the next person, they're like the gatekeeper.
Exactly.
Like you want to get through the gate, I got the key.
That's exactly
I'm not going to take my key out unless you do this.
Well, and the thing, too, is the veiled threats. That's the thing, which they did make good on later on. So I had real reason for being scared of the veiled threats. Because by up to that point, I said I didn't want to do it. He definitely made those light veiled threats. Like, well, you'll have a hard time. Like, first of all, like I said, what does that even mean? Like, what exactly does that mean? But I did take it seriously and for good reason. So but yeah, I just remember like scrubbing myself like violently because it was just disgusting. And I made it very clear how much I resented it, the dynamic. I resented it and I hated it. That's one thing that is like, it's upsetting because it's like now this is not consensual. Like this is, you know, you're being predatory. So, you know, it happened, I think, a few more times. In the midst of this, he brought me to the agent, which is fine because they are not linked to me at all, completely off the books if anyone researches it or anything. But yeah, they brought me to an agent. So
just so we're clear, so after you finally, well, I can't even, it's tough to even say, finally do it. After he coerces you into sexual acts a couple times, then he finally opens the door to an agency.
Yes.
And And you told me, like, this wasn't a fly-by-night. This was an A-list agency, right?
Yes. Well, he connected me to an agent who connected me to an agency. I will say this agent is not connected to the agency at all. So just preface that. But he connected me to a shady person who had a connection to get me into an agency. And it was interesting, you know, because some people, they work so hard. They jump through all these hurdles. This is just a comment on the industry. And this is like really how it is. They work so hard. They work for years to get this, right? To get signed across the board. Signed across the board means they'll rep you in theatrical, print modeling, you know, film, TV, everything. Signed across the board. And so, like, you have to work really hard for that usually. But no, he introduces me to this agent, and I'll never forget it. Like, looking back is so shady, so creepy too. Like, you know, just the looks that they would exchange in this meeting that we had together. Just like totally like I was just sizing me up. Like I'm like
eyeballing you.
A piece of meat. Like, what can we get away with this one? He got me the shady agent, had a connect that got me signed to the agency, right? And so I got signed across the board like that. Instantly. No, I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to audition. I didn't have to do anything. And you have to especially at like a SAG agency, you have to audition for that. You can't just you know, unless you have nepotism or something like that, you know? I always say it's about the 3 F's: who your friends are, who you're fucking, and who your family is. That's what it's really about.
All right.
And, but yeah, so I got signed across the board like that. And I'm like, wow, all that work, you know, because before I got signed to this agency, I had been with a few like boutique agencies that were not working. And it was just like, it's an uphill battle when you're first starting out, right? Like to get good representation, get into a good agency, you got to find somebody who actually wants to like really work for you. Like most agents will take you on and they'll just like forget about you, or they'll just hold you in their roster, like whatever. And you have to do all the work yourself.
Take me into the story where you went on the audition and the director or producer's like, you're the one.
Oh yeah, we're getting there. We're getting to that. But there's something important that happens before that, right? So I get into a relationship, right, with somebody. I start dating someone and I move in with them. Yeah, so I move in with him, and then that was like really like a big breaking point, you know, because I was like, I have to put a stop to this. Like, I can't. This is just, I have to stop this, and I wanted to stop it anyways, right? You know, and the breaking point was the manager was trying to get me to have him come over our house so that he could do this stuff to me, or you know, have this stuff transpire.
Have who come over?
Have him come over to the house that I shared with my new partner. Oh. Yes. Tried to have, yes. And I'm like, absolutely not.
Wanting a threesome? Or just wanting to do it at your place?
Yes. Right. Yes. So to allow it to still transpire, basically. Even though I'm in this relationship and I moved in with somebody, I'm like, absolutely not. Are you crazy? No, absolutely not. You're not coming to the place that I live with my boyfriend. And this is not like, I was like, this can't happen anymore. It's just gotta stop. So at that point, that was the breaking point. And it caused, obviously, this is when, you know, I had to see what was that, that he said I was going to have a hard time. So now I was going to get to find out what have a hard time meant. So, you know, he goes, and that's what he said to me. He reiterated. He's like, you know, I'm sure you'll do. Well, he's like, well, I guess this will, you know, bring to a close us kind of working together here. And he's like, I'm sure you'll do just fine. And he goes, but, you know, I can't push you anymore, you know, so you might have a bit of a hard time, but I'm sure that you'll do just fine. And I'm like, okay, whatever this means. And I'm like, whatever. I'm like, it doesn't matter, right? Because I'm still signed, right? I got what I needed out of it. I can just move on. I don't have to deal with this guy anymore. I can just go fine, you know what I mean? Get work and I'll be okay.
Or so you thought.
Or so I thought, you know? So, and I had it in the back of my head. I'm like, he definitely is going to run to this agent and then God knows what's going to happen, right? So I knew that was a possibility. I didn't really think it was going to go down like it was, but this is how you learn. You know, when you don't have nepotism and you don't have, you know, you're doing it on your own by yourself. Yeah, this is how you learn.
Nobody to stand up for you.
No, I mean, and yeah, no. And even when you do, they still have to deal with stuff too.
Right.
I've dated quite a few Nepo babies and Nepo families, and they've got their own stories too. So it's just everywhere.
Wow.
Yeah. So basically I went on this audition and it was for a YouTube Red series, right? I was excited because I was gonna get to go to San Fran and I was gonna stay there for like 6 months. And if I got the gig, right? And I was gonna get to film for this series. I was so excited, right? Because I was like, oh, I want to go to San Fran. This is exciting. And so I get sent this audition and I auditioned for it. And then I get a call back and then I'm like, yes, this is exciting. It's going well. And then I auditioned for it again. And then I got another call back. And I'm like, yes, we're getting down to the wire. And then so I get to the very end and I do really well. And then I'm on a video call with the producer and he's like, we loved it. We're out. Like, we definitely want to work with you. Now we just have to iron out the logistics with that agent. We're just going to go ahead and, we're going to go ahead and iron out those logistics. And then we'll figure out, because we already, when they send you on an audition, right? This is like agents they're supposed to know how to do their jobs. From the get-go, right? Any standard audition, it will say you're going to get paid this much and then plus like 15 or 20% or whatever for your agent. Okay. So it'll be that fee. It'll be like what, $2,000, for example. And then it'll be plus 20%, right? So you have your own, payment. They have their own payment. Right. And so this should have been ironed out from the get-go. The monetary aspect should not have been complicated. Neither should have the dates. Like when you go on an audition, it is already accounted for. All of this is already planned. That is already set in stone before anybody auditions for stuff like this. So anyways, we're just going to iron out the logistics then, of me getting over there, flying over there, how all of this other stuff. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm really excited. I got the job. I'm stoked. Right. And then a week goes by and I'm like, oh, well, standard time to wait is 2 weeks. 2 weeks. If it's after 2 weeks, then okay, I either didn't get it or something's up. But if you were told you already got it, then something's probably up. So 2 weeks goes by and then it got to 2.5 weeks. And that's when I'm like, oh no, because I had it in the back of my mind, something could happen, something could go wrong here. So I remember calling up the agent and I was like, so what's going on? Because I got that gig. And he was like, oh, I don't know. I haven't heard back from them. I was like, how is that possible? I was on FaceTime with the producer myself and they said that I got it. So what happened? And it was just, I was kept getting these roundabout answers, right? On how it just somehow magically fell through, which in general is so unacceptable for any, it's just, you got to have an actual reason, you got to tell me what the actual reason is, usually it's oh, okay, they recast, or it's especially for something that's unionized, things like that, it's, for sure, things can get greenlit and then panned and whatnot, but that's not what was being told to me. It was not being told to me that it was panned. I was being told, oh, I have no idea. They never got back to me, which was obviously not the case because I spoke to them myself. So, yeah, so that was not good. And I'm like, okay, I can read between the lines. You're obviously just you're trying to screw me over here. So... And I found that out more and more as time went on because unfortunately, so when you agree to be rep by somebody, you sign a contract, all right? So I did sign a contract to agree to be held under rep through them for a period of time.
Do you sign for a time period? 3 years,
and that's just it. Whenever somebody does this, 10 out of 10 recommend go over it with an entertainment lawyer. Sign for a shorter period of time. I signed. It was open ended, so I signed on they could drop me whenever they felt like, which is not smart. Don't do that. Don't do that. And I ended up getting held in contract with them for years. And this has happened too in music a lot. There's a few legendary music artists who have had stuff like this happen where they'll have issues with, different people that are repping them and then they'll try to hold them in contract for revenge. It happens all the time.
Now this guy's willing to forego his commission because he would have got a cut on your thing. just to be spiteful because you cut the other guy off.
I mean, and not even, and maybe he was just doing a horrible job and giving me no respect, but it's actually pretty common for agents to like pan you. Like they will hold you in rep because they have so many other people that they're repping. They'll be like, I'm making this, that, and the other off of all these other people. So why would I even really bother with them? You know, they'll just keep, they have a lot of agents have bottom of the barrel people like that they have on their roster. That they don't even send out on auditions. I know so many actors who are being repped that they're like, I haven't been sent on an audition by my agent in like years, like wow. Or months, all the time. That happens all the time. But he definitely. Can
you go out on your own to try to get an audition besides?
So we're gonna get to that because that's what I end up having to do. But yeah, after that, like things kind of dried up. He stopped sending me on auditions. So it's like, I mean, I can read between the lines here. You're just not willing to work with me because I wasn't willing to work with your predatory friend. That's really what happened.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, lesson learned. I feel it's a little blackmail-y, but yeah, I can read between the lines. So I'm like, all right, I have to find a way to still like work and stuff, you know, and still perform. So I just kind of like start auditioning kind of under their noses, and I could still do a lot of non-union. So I started doing like non-union. Everyone starts off in horror. So I started off in my shitty horror movies, my B-list horror movies. And you know, I started doing that and a lot of non-union stuff. And that was fun. It was a lot of fun, and I'm really happy that I did that. I actually ended up in some really good things too. At the end, I was making a horror film with Tom Sizemore. He passed away. Rest in peace, Tom Sizemore. But yeah, so I got to see some pretty amazing. I started getting on some pretty good sets and seeing some amazing actors, and I was able to still get paid and book things.
So can you make a living, you know, doing the horror movies?
Absolutely. There's so many things too. I have friends who started working as PAs, you know, on set and, you know, in front of the camera, behind the camera. And it's so much fun. I love filming horror movies is a blast. Like with the fake blood and all the makeup, it's the best. It's so much fun. I loved dying in anything that I was in because it was so much fun to film. It was so much fun. I loved it. Yeah. But, you know, too, I was still able to like freely do music and whatnot. I did background vocals for some pretty big artists. I got to sing background vocals for R. Kelly and Mary J. Blige. Shout out to my friend, my producer friend, who had me sing background vocals for R. Kelly when he was at RCA. I never got to meet him, so I get that question a lot. People are like, "Did you meet R. Kelly? Like, what was that like?" No, I never met him. The song was pre-recorded. I came in with a few other girls and we did background vocals on it when he was at RCA. But those were cool experiences. I got, like I said, I had my hands in a lot of different things. So I got to like really like dip my toes into a lot of different areas, you know, and some more than others, you know.
Right.
But that also, like, I was doing the modeling. So that kind of brings us to the next thing, you know. I was always doing the modeling. The modeling thing started in Connecticut when I was really little. So that started, I mean, my whole entire life was like in front of a camera. So, you know, then I was doing a lot of freelance modeling. I was technically signed for print because I said I was signed across the board. So I was signed for print modeling. But then I went, you know, I was doing a lot of freelance modeling. And there was, of course, it's like everybody knows everyone, like I said, in LA. So all the photographers know all the models and everyone follows everyone. And, oh, you know this person and I know that actor and you know that. It's just very cliquey. It's very, very, it's easy to get involved in the cliques. A lot easier than in New York. New York's actually very cliquey, like insulated cliquey. And they will not like open up as much. In LA, they're very, you follow that person on Instagram, you're friends with them, I'll follow you back. Let's go on a shoot sometime. Like it's very open that way. Very easy to network via social media in LA. And so that's kind of how I came across this next person, the photographer. They were a celebrity photographer. Now, everybody kind of knew this person. They were dating a model in LA that everybody also knew. Like you would see them on Instagram. You'd be like, oh, that's Exo Bunny 650. You know, it's just like everybody knew each other by their Instagrams just through networking, through photographers, musicians, actors, all that stuff, right? So I knew who they were. And I think I trusted this person more because they were friends with this other girl that I knew who's also adopted in the industry. She and I met on a music video shoot for Jeremiah. It was a Halloween music video shoot. And like we got along. We spent the entire day like, you know, filming that. And I liked her. She seemed like a nice, normal person. And she was friends with him. So I was like, oh, well, then if she's friends with him, then it should be fine, right? But one of my photographer friends had told me like something sketchy about this this guy, he was like, one of my other models said that when they were on a shoot that he like touched her or something, like that. And I'm like, huh, that's definitely really sketchy. But
Now, and this guy is well connected and well known. Like, and
Exactly.
he was
no, like top tier.
the photographer for somebody who is, way at the top.
He was the personal photographer for the most famous people in the US.
Yeah.
Like the most famous people. I won't say the names, but he was the personal photographer for the most famous people. Like A-list celebrities. All the
So
A-listers.
it's gotta be tough to like weigh, like, all right, what would they be doing being best friends with this guy? And then I hear this story that he tried to touch somebody.
It was just like a weird story, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, but also this person I know personally who I'm friends with, and I trusted her enough, we connected on the adopted thing. I did trust her. I could tell she had a good heart. I was like, okay, well, I'm not getting that. I'm sure it's fine, And then when I spoke to him, he was, and this is the point like I made earlier, they treat everybody differently. They treat everybody differently. And it can be a spiraling thing. Because I think this is early on. Before, I had to be one of the earlier people. I think I was one of the earlier survivors, victims, whatever you want to call it. Because I think he spiraled out and got worse. But he seemed normal to me when I was talking to him. It was just like any other conversation with any other photographer. We were talking about getting together. We were talking about shooting. We were talking about where we were going to shoot. I remember we finally met up that day. And I'll never forget it because he took me for Chick-fil-A before we went to shoot. And it's the first time I ever ate Chick-fil-A. It's so weird, like the things that stick in your mind. And since then, I have never eaten Chick-fil-A ever again because it was such a bad day.
It's a trigger.
Yeah, it was a trigger. I'm like, I can't. It just reminds me of it. No.
It's almost like he's trying to lower your guard. Like, I'm taking you out for Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
How bad can I be?
Yeah, and it's crazy too because I knew who his girlfriend was. I knew this guy's girlfriend. Like, this is just crazy. But anyway, so we go to the shoot. It's regular standard. I like to preface this too with, yes, I did have clothes on because I don't like it when people say things like, well, did you have clothes on? Or maybe, things like that with these models and stuff. Either way, it's just completely unprofessional and crazy. But so we go to the shoot. Everything starts out normal, right? There was a point then in which where he did start to touch me. But it's not like he started it like overtly and like, it was like normal. Like back in that time in LA, right? They would do this thing where there would like a lot of models, there would be like a guy's like hand in the shot and it would be like her holding his hand, right? And then it would be a shot of her and it would just be his hand and her holding it. Things like that. Pretty normal, right? Just hand holding, things like that. Be like, okay, cool, let's get my hand in the shot so that we can do one of those kinds of photos, right? That's kind of how it started out, right? But then it turned into him like touching me, right? And it wasn't like it was not like a slow to start thing. This was something that was like pretty, like it happened very, very fast. I think intentionally, intentionally so. He immediately started to like, do things to me in a sexual manner. And it was very, very fast. And I'm like, I said to him, I was like, he was already disrobed from the bottom down. It was like, started touching me, already out there naked, trying to physically come on to me to like have sex with me. And I told him I really don't want to do this. I specifically said I did not want to. And I said, especially because, like I don't want to have unprotected sex with you because God only knows where this fucking person's been, on top of it. If you're like this and now I'm starting to put the pieces together while this is happening to me, I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, like God only knows, like this is, even if it were to happen, I'm concerned because I don't know, you could have diseases. I don't know what's going on here, and that was what I said to him. That was the excuse I gave. Did it stop it? Absolutely not. It did not stop it. He just kept going right along with it. And when things like this happen, you get scared, right? Especially if it's somebody who is so powerful, like connected to powerful people. Because in my mind, okay, I'm like weighing out the options. What do I do, right? What do I do? Do I like just push him off and like freak out and run out of here? And then what happens from there? what happens from there now? Like, I've got to worry about how this is going to go with his connections to these people. That's enough to, if connections like that, when they're at the top, they're at the top. The people he's connected to are at the tippity top. That like is a done deal there. Like, they could end if he utilized it in the right way, could absolutely end your career right there. Just done forever in one split second. And so that's like where my mind was going. And keep in mind, I hadn't been through years of therapy yet to get over the grooming that I had from the previous incident. So I'm frozen. I got really scared. And like, I didn't really know what to do. I didn't know what to do. So I just kind of disassociated like I usually did, right? In the previous incident. And, I wasn't there. I was not there for it. And then I remember when he finished, I once again ran to the bathroom, like scrubbing myself. That's like this thing that like whenever in these situations, that's always how I handled it. I would like viciously scrub myself down because you just feel so disgusting. You feel so disgusting. But I was really mad about this one because I said I didn't want to, specifically to the person as it was happening, and it still happened. So that really was upsetting for me because I knew, okay, something's really wrong this time. Something's really wrong at this point because it's not like I said beforehand and I was coerced. I said I don't want to do this and you keep doing it. Like, and the only alternative is for me to get physical with you. And that's scary. That's a scary position to put me in, for multiple reasons. I'm here alone with you. You're a guy who's bigger than I am. Number two, what is going to happen because of all these other people you're connected to? I don't know. Like, these people have money and power. People forget that. Like, yes, these are the kinds of people, if they wanted to do something, they could absolutely. Like, what kind of people, what do people think? It's just a regular, no, it does happen. It does. So I was really scared. Anyways, but I just viciously scrubbing myself in the bathroom of this studio, this like rented out studio. And because it's like a big building, right? It was an actual place where people would go for photo shoots. It's like a whole top of a floor in like downtown LA. So there's like different studio rooms, and then you have like a bathroom. So I'm like in this bathroom, viciously scrubbing myself.
And how is he like afterward? Is he like, hey, good shoot. I'll see you. Take care.
No. I like ran out of there. Like after he was like stopped, I got my stuff and ran out of there. So it was obvious something was not right. And I was like, and I literally just left from the bathroom. I literally just ran out of there and called an Uber and left. So I didn't say goodbye to him. I didn't say anything.
Is he texting you like, you better?
No, I think he could tell like it was not like a great situation. After the fact, obviously, I never spoke to him ever again. Ever again. I know he did send me the photos. Which is really crazy from that day. But it's wild because one of them I actually did post, because it's like, it's weird. It's like an ominous, it's like it was a big pivotal moment, but an ominous thing too. I'm like looking out the window, and it was probably only like 30 minutes before it happened, which is really crazy. And most people be like, why would you post that though then? And I'm like, I don't know. It's a reminder. So I got out of there, and it's crazy, right? So I'll finish with telling what ended up happening to this person. Eventually, I gotta keep it vague so I don't am not specific, so people know who it is. But eventually, it ended up coming out about what happened to this, about what this person did to other people, right? So another model ended up exposing this person, right? And next thing you know, the numbers keep rising. Now it's like 20 girls, then it became like 30 girls, then it became like 50 girls. And he had gotten into some sort of an accident, I'll say. And, this is before it came out, right? And I was like really worried. I'm like, he's still going to hurt other people. He's going to hurt other girls. I know it for a fact. And then he ended up healing from that, and he did. And that's when he kept being predatory to other girls. And that's when it was all exposed and all these girls started coming out, right? One girl exposed her conversation with him, and then from there it just kept it just snowball effect. Everybody, more and more people came out. I did give my story anonymously to a major news source, but I was like, it has to be anonymous because I don't want to be I don't want my name out there. I don't want this at all like that, I'm still I want it anonymous for very specific reasons.
Right.
I'm not trying to upset those celebrities. They had to come out over this. Like the people that he was the photographer for, he had to come out after this. They all had to come out and, say, I can't believe that he was like this. They had to give statements. All these A-listers had to give statements, against him saying, I had no idea he was doing this to all these women. I stand with the victims, this, that, and the other. I will say some of the celebrities were a lot kinder and a lot more respectful to us than others. A few of them, there was one celebrity who said something like, if you don't want to get naked, just don't. Or if you don't want to get naked for photographer, don't. Which is very upsetting for someone like me because I was clothed at the time. It didn't really matter. It felt a little victim blamey, but most of them were very respectful. And I really appreciate their statements. But because he utilized his connection with them to do what he did to everybody, that's what he was utilizing it for. But I do also find it so interesting because this was on the news. Like I remember coming home one day and seeing this A-lister make a statement on the news about this guy who did this thing to me and all these other women. And I remember watching them make the statement and I'm just like, wow, okay, so then what's going to happen now? All these girls come out, like something's got to happen, right? Nothing. Like the story ended up pretty much getting like swept under the rug. Unless you like specifically know who to look for, as you could see, there's not like a lot to find on it. There's a few news source articles from back when it happened, when it came out. But I never heard of him going to jail. I never heard of any lawsuits, nothing. And you know what's even crazier? I want to say about like a year or two ago, and he couldn't work though. I will say this again. He could never work again as a photographer. So, and he lost his main social media account. I think that Instagram took it down. I did get a message, I want to say a year or two ago. This is how like sick and deluded some of these people are. From like a random Instagram account. And I could tell it was his. And it said in the caption, it said, the internet is evil in the bio. And they messaged me and they were like, hey, how are you? And I'm like, what do you mean? How am I? What do you mean, how am I? Do you want to pay for my therapy bills? Like, what do you mean, how am I?
Wow.
And keep in mind, this is all these women, I gave my story anonymously. All these women, we all came out saying like what happened, so he had plenty of time to understand that he did things wrong. He crossed lines here. There was things wrong with what he did, so
he's sending to a rape victim of his, hey, how are you?
Yeah, from a random.
And that's the same exact thing my predator said to me when I showed up at his house. He's like, hey, how are you?
Yeah,
it's just like,
how are you? But from a random Instagram account that he created that says the internet is evil. So obviously he's blaming the internet and everyone else on that. Like it's just it's so diluted and sick. It's crazy. I mean, I obviously read it and did not respond and then blocked them. I don't think I could have been clearer about what went down between him and I. I don't think I could have been clearer to this person. I have never spoken to them ever again. So I don't think I could have been clearer. But
wow.
Yeah, sick person. And it's sad that he's still like out there.
And how does your time in LA wind up?
It got worse. I mean, it definitely got worse because I spiraled after a lot of this stuff, know, like it just really like messes. And there was other things that happened to me too that were really bad. There was other things that happened as well. Kind of similar. I had one other incident with someone I thought was a friend. And then you have to be very careful about the people that you associate with in LA when you're young, especially. You need to be very, very, very careful. And it takes a long time to sift through people and find who's safe and who's not. Because there's so many drugs and there's so much debauchery that goes on there, honestly, that it's very, very easy to end up in situations, especially if you're an attractive young female, to end up in situations like this. I mean, there was a story of two young models who they went out to a party and then they were drugged and killed. Like those were two models that were adjacent in a group of friends of mine, so it's stuff like this happens and worse happens more than people realize. Like, especially when it comes to sexual assault. Like I said, I was one of 40, 50 other women that he did this to. So there's a lot of other people who are living with that experience, and that's just one person. Think of all the other people, all the other predators in the industry and over in LA and everywhere else, and all the other people who have had incidents with them that are also not talking about it.
Right.
You know, so it's very common. I don't know any woman in the industry who hasn't had a brush with it. I'm not saying that maybe it's happened to them, but everybody's had something like a brush with it.
Right.
You know.
So you have all these events, and then like you know you're traumatized, and
I spiraled
to handle your trauma, you dive into substances.
Yeah, well, and I was around. My problem was that I was around people that were like, you know, using and stuff like that, and I was really trying to like get away from that, and it took me a long time. I had to shed so many people, and it's tough because some of them can be people that you really like. You know, and that's the tough part. I had a hard time with that. I had a hard time with it being with people I really liked. And that I didn't fully shed some of those people until my late 20s when I went back to visit, which is crazy. But now I am in such a great place. Like I completely shed that part of my life.
You told me you even got down to like 80 pounds.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's insane.
And that was the pressure to look a certain way. I still deal with that. The pressure to be a certain weight, to be like a certain degree of skinny, especially in LA, it was like, but even still, I still deal with that, you know, just if you're in the light in any way, you're going to deal with that. So that was the pressure. But also I was around people who were doing substances, and I loved that like the substances made it easier for me to get skinny. You know, I was like, this is great. I was like, it's like, this is pre-Ozempic. Okay. So I was like, this is amazing. And I feel great. You know?
I can take this drug. It makes me not want to eat. And
I thought it was fantastic.
I could be up for days going at it.
It was a match made in heaven or hell. But yeah, for that, I was like, this is fantastic until the other downsides of it starts to rear its ugly head, you know?
Right.
And so,
the problem with drugs is that they work.
Yeah.
And then till they don't work.
Exactly.
Right. Until they get their claws in you.
But
I think tell me if I'm right. I think I recall from our conversation, I was talking about an escort that was on Soft White Underbelly who like was escorting in the Hollywood Hills to all the directors, and they're like, they were all Satanists, and like, you know, they would have just the Satan Bible out and playing satanic. And didn't you go to parties where like that stuff was going on?
I haven't met any Satanists. What I will say is I've met people who take certain things and then they just, because they're already down the rabbit hole with the drugs and everything else, they take certain things, and anybody can take, you know, any book and kind of go rogue with it and be like, oh, I'm going to do this with that. And, you know, there's no structure to it. It's just a crazy person, basically a fanatic. You know, an independent fanatic. I've met a lot of amazing people who are into all sorts of different, like to study belief systems and things like that. And those are amazing people, and they actually have respect for things. But I think there's a lot of crazy people on meth and all sorts of other drugs that like think that they're just pulling random books and just doing like their own stuff that
just
they're making.
Because they're methed out.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Doing their own thing, going rogue, and just kind of like, you know, it's like those, it's not unlike these fanatics that you see all the time that just like take something and go do something.
Well, that's what the escort said is like everybody was doing meth. And
they take something and then they run with it, and then they make up their own stuff. And I'm like, if you actually even like look into that book, that's not what it is at all. Like a lot of the things that they're taking, I'm like, you know, zany people.
So to sum things up then, how do you put back your life? How do you get sanity? You know, I heard you mention therapy, you know, so like what else keeps you grounded and helps you stay sane?
Therapy, exercise, working out. Working out helps a lot. Yeah. Therapy, just getting through it. Time. It took me time. It's taken time. Like like I said, finally at my late 20s, I shed all of those people that were not good for me. So I can go back to LA now and have an amazing time and live a normal life over there, which is amazing because all of the people I surround myself with are really nice and normal and have their stuff together, and they don't do drugs like that. So, you know, it's good. And just time, working out, therapy. Definitely recommend therapy heavily. But
any advice to someone who's, you know, wanting to get into the industry?
Find people that you can trust and bounce things off of them. If you find the best in a bad situation and stick with those people. Like, stick with those people, because if you find the right group of people who have good connections and you're safe with them, like I have people that, like, you know, I have a mentor that I absolutely adore, shout out to him, you know, I'm safe with him. I stick with his, you know, the people he knows, and he has connections, and I'm safe, you know, with that crowd of people. You know, I met some amazing actors as well. You know, there's some amazing people I look up to, and I just stick with them and you'll be fine. Just find
Have
the
you
best.
heard of the same type of predatory person in New York as much as it
Yes.
was in LA? They're here
absolutely.
too.
Well,
Yeah,
because LA and New York mixes together. So everyone who's in LA comes to New York, and everyone who's in New York comes to LA. You know, I'm sure people have probably seen in the news, Peter Nygaard, he was a fashion mogul. He's in New York. You know, I know people adjacent to that. So yeah, absolutely.
All right, so they're everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah,
at
yeah.
all levels.
Right.
At all levels. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot. I just wish people would be more understanding and kind, but people need to be more understanding as to why people end up in these situations. And I hate when I see things like, oh, why didn't you just leave? Or, you know, why didn't you just go do something else with your life? There has to be more of an understanding about what's actually going on there.
Well, yeah, and you know, I get that too. Like on podcasts I've done, like people will be like, they know exactly how the 10-year-old them would have reacted, you know, as the adult now. So somebody will hear this, and exactly they're gonna know exactly how their 20-year-old self in LA, chasing this dream, would have reacted. I would have kicked that guy in the nuts and ran out of there. I would have poked that photographer in the eye and ran. You know, like.
Yeah.
You know, they're like the first guy, he took a year and a half of grooming to get to that point. It's not like he just pounced on you.
Well, even with
the photographer pounced on you.
The photographer, the girl who actually was the one who spoke out first, she ended up getting her social media accounts all taken down and cited for bullying. Okay, so when people are like, "Oh, nothing will happen to you," that's not true. I've seen it happen to people who have spoke out. I've seen it with my own eyes.
And then it happened to you when you go on this audition.
Exactly.
You get the job, and then your
And then I'm
agent's
held.
like, "Nah, I don't know, it never came through."
Yep, and then I was held in contract.
Hey.
I remember they finally sent me an email. Right, I want to say this is like 4 or 5 years ago now, and they were like, "We're finally announcing that we're going to be letting you go from this." It was the final thing I was repped from them by, and I was like. Yes, and I was like, I'm so disappointed.
Yeah.
I'm so disappointed. No, I'm free.
Yeah. I mean, it's a trap, and like you just feel trapped. Like, yeah, all right, I'll go become a barista at Starbucks.
Yeah,
sorry,
right.
Exactly. That's really going to satisfy my dreams.
My need to perform.
Right. So I get it, and these guys. These predators get it too, and that's they're like cashing in on it.
It's evil to hold dreams hostage like that.
Right,
it's pure evil, honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
Shelby, that's an amazing story. If people want to get a hold of you or follow you and keep track of your progress in life, how do they find you?
You can find me on my Instagram, Shelby Lyn Official. But I'm still posting a lot of my modeling stuff. I'm just getting back into that now, but I will definitely be putting my music on there soon. I'm working on an EP. So.
Shelby Lyn, is it Lyn or Li?
Lyn, Shelby Lyn Official. And I have a short film coming out soon that we're hoping is going to be at Sundance, and that's going to be really fantastic. So keep an eye out.
There you have it, everybody. Another edition of the Free Like Me podcast. There's predators in all walks of life just trying to capitalize on your dreams. So be careful out there. Peace.